Hello and welcome to Hey Clarity. I'm your host, Lindsay, and today we are opening the Akashic Records on youth. And under the topic of youth, we are covering embryo, infancy, babies, childhood into teenage years. So we're using the word youth to open up all of that. I took a poll on Instagram to gather questions around what we might be curious about on the topic of youth. And so some of the questions that we'll be asking, we're going to ask for an opening message or opening visual. One of the questions will be, what is the most precious aspect of youth that we forget as we get older? How formed and clear is our consciousness as embryos, babies, kids, teenagers? Asking the records to walk us through the main points of our progression through each time of our youth or digression. What are the mechanisms that drive infants to be completely attached to parents? How can adults better appreciate the mindset of a young child? Why is the desire to play so strong in children? And how can adults consciously re-cultivate that energy? Before toddlers develop comprehensive language, are there unique ways that they can communicate with each other that adults can't? And lastly, what's the most important message we need to know about youth? So we're in the Akashic Records on youth. I opened them and said the opening prayer prior to hitting record. So starting with the opening message or opening visual, I'm just going to invite in what is the opening message or opening visual on youth. They're showing me like a can of like soda, and when you open the can, like pop, like there's all this fizziness, there's this, and they're giving me the word excitement. It's like the sound, like the details of that, right? So it's like they're kind of like, it's like opening a can of like excitement. And that's really interesting. There is something about the like precision of opening this can. Why precise? Why precision? The edge. There's something about the edge of excitement, the edge of excitement. Knowing it's like they're showing almost like a commercial of someone opening like, a Pepsi can or something, and like the excitement in the advertisement of the kid cracking open the can, and then like the fizziness comes out, and then they drink it and they're like, ah. So they're like excitement, precision, the precision, like on the edge of excitement. They're like on the edge of your seat, like life feels like there's excitement everywhere, like just around the corner. And they're saying like open, like open to the excitement, and a bit of this on the edge. Interesting. Are there any other opening messages or visuals around youth? They're saying the energy of excitement, the energy of excitement of life, what's to become of us, what's to come. There's so much like looking forward to life. There's so much like looking forward to growing and learning, and like what's next, like, what am I going to do today? And anything can happen is what they're saying. They're like living on the edge of excitement, like kind of at all times. Okay, what is the most precious aspect of youth that we forget as we get older? What is the most precious aspect of youth that we forget as we get older? The growing and the learning and the like watching yourself grow and like watching each other grow. So they're saying, like visually and physically, we have these like measurements and these timelines and these little landmarks of like watching ourselves grow and they're showing like your hands get bigger and your feet get bigger and you get taller, and like they're marking these things on like when you mark your height on like a wall. And because there's so much like physicality in growing up like through youth, like these measurements are these like really special landmarks. And then they're like, well, when you're full grown, we don't celebrate our growth in the same way. They're kind of like, we like monetize our growth, or you liken our growth to like achievements and things like that. And they're saying like, even like the growth of like growing older. So they're kind of showing like growing bigger, and then like maybe you get a little bit smaller as you're getting older. But they're like marking those notches like in the wall, and like noting, like really celebrating the years, the decades, these milestones and these timelines. They're saying like continue to celebrate them. Like they're saying like, why do you get lost in the days, and like let them blend together instead of like celebrating these achievements and these landmarks of old age. They're like, it's a celebration to last longer. Like it's a celebration to be able to live more days. And yet we like dread getting older. And they're like, no, like, a life can be cut short. And they're saying like to celebrate the long time that you live. Like these are achievements in themselves of like, they're like humanity, but also like they're saying like, like the fears of the world and the turmoil and the tragedies that happen throughout the world, whether it's like violence or wars or sickness, or they're like heartbreak and, all the things that happen to us. And they're saying like, we forget to celebrate. We forget the celebration of life. Like it continues. And they're like, it continues beyond your 20s and your 30s and your 40s. Like keep that line, keep that timeline of celebrations going. And they're even like, look at your hands. Like, are they changing? Like look at how your hands are changing. There's so much stigma on like growing older as being this like weakness, this like less than, miserable, sad, dreadful thing. And they're saying like it really like poisons the reality and the idea of like growing older. They're like, growing older is a gift of like a long life. They're kind of like, if you want that, if you value a long life, it should be celebrated. And they're kind of like, it's a celebration of life to be able to live a long time. Because even the evolution of humans, like they're saying like there were times when like you wouldn't live past like 27, 35, 45, 55. They were like, there was so much sickness and so much disease and so many terrible tragedies and dangerous like ways of living that like not many people survived. And so these days it's much easier to live a long life. And so we take it for granted. We take it for granted that it's an achievement. So next question, how formed and clear is our consciousness as embryos, babies, kids, and teenagers? So now I'm going to break it down, and we're going to go from each one. So let's go with like embryos. How formed and clear is human consciousness as an embryo? I'm getting like it's very clear, like it's pure and it's innocent and it's in like waiting. Like the gestation is like waiting, but it's like, it's so clear. I'm getting like it's clear and it's ready. And it's almost like they're showing this, like they're calling it like this little like circle of life. Almost as if like it has an eye and it's like seeing things that like recognize anything, but like nothing can, like almost like it's an eye, like it's an eye. It like can sense and understand and like see everything, but there's no like emotionality or like mental, physical sensations, aspects associated with it. So it's just like this pure, innocent, like awareness and understanding. It's like, it's not attached. It's unattached to like anything. Like it's unattached to anything. It's just waiting, the gestation. Very clear, pure, innocent, very clear, unattached. So how formed and clear is our consciousness as babies? How formed and clear is our consciousness of babies? So they're showing that like the entry into the world is such an overwhelm of sensations. So you're going from like this very like nurtured, quiet, held, like generally, they're kind of saying generally like space. And then you're out in the world and like you feel like the senses and you see the lights and you hear the sounds. And so it's almost like the birth is so traumatic on the system, like there's so much overwhelm that like you forget, it kind of like almost like erases, and there's like a forgetting of this kind of like clean, clear consciousness. But it's because it's like waking up all these senses, and there's a full, like every part of the consciousness is acclimating to the environment. So like it's kind of like where there's like an emergency to this new environment, this clear kind of consciousness gets lost. And they're kind of saying that's kind of where like the forgetting of consciousness like happens as like a baby, is because it's like, oh, like every aspect of me is trying to bring nutrition to this part of my brain. Every aspect of me is trying to bring like, sensory awareness to this thing. So it's just like there's so much overwhelm in the system of like the growing and the adapting and the acclimating to the environment, that it becomes more sensory, they're saying. Like it becomes way more sensory overwhelm, like sensory overload. And so at that time, they're kind of saying it's not like a very like calm experience. And so having the calm environment, this peaceful, restful environment for the baby is really important, because they're going from this safe womb space, home, quiet, space, to being like out in the world. And so that transition is, they're saying, just like it's very active, it's highly traumatic, it's highly activating, and the system gets overwhelmed. So it's a bit of like a forgetting of the consciousness, because there's so much focus on the external environment impacting this system. How formed and clear is our consciousness as kids? Let's say like young kids up until like preteen. How formed and clear is our consciousness? How formed and clear is our consciousness? They're saying like formation. Like the formation of ideas, the formation of understanding, the learning, the growing. It becomes very like mental. Like mental and emotional. I'm getting like listening and absorbing. And it's like, because they're like learning from you, like how to survive, right? So it's like once they're less dependent on you to like feed and do all these things, they're doing it for themselves. It's like there's a part of them that is like learning everything possible from you to grow and to survive. They're kind of like, like animals in the wild. Like we like paying attention to everything, like absorbing like how you do this and how you do that. And like, I'm going to do that too. So it's like the survival instincts kick in. And this is also when the like excitement and the curiosity, the growing and the learning kicks in. Is there anything else? So how formed and clear is our consciousness? So as kids, how formed and clear is our consciousness as kids? They're saying like this is when we start like recognizing and acknowledging things like emotions, like mental brain, like learning things, right? They're like, numbers and letters and colors and shapes and animals, like all that, like the recognition of things, the memories, like this starts getting more, like they're saying baked in. It gets more baked in. And yes, the excitement, the curiosity of growing and learning from everybody in their vicinity, learning from everybody around them, right? So it's like, oh, they do that like that. It's like simplify, like, oh, they eat like that, and they eat like that, and they eat like that, and they eat like that. And then like they're kind of like trying, like, like I'm eating like this because that's how I saw how to do it. But it's like, oh, there's another way. Like maybe I could do another way. Like they're like, there's a curiosity to learn things, learn how to do things in certain ways or in different ways, depending on how much they're I'm getting like adaptive, how much they are like shown, exposed to, how much exposure they have of like multiple things for curiosity. And they're kind of like, for example, like if someone is in like living practically in like a vacuum, right? And their only experiences with like one person or with like one type of living, like that's how they see the world, like that's how they see living, and that's what they learn, and that's it. But when there's like a diverse experience of learning from all these different things, they can kind of take in a lot. And they're like, that can be too much. So it's interesting. There's like this like overload of experiences, and they're kind of saying that kind of like make or break it for us. Like this is like in kids, it's like this is the making and the breaking of us. And they're saying literally the making and the breaking of us is when we're kids. So I'm getting like make it or break it. You make them or you break them. You make or break a person through childhood. And they're saying that's why it's like most important to like aim for the making it and not breaking it. And they're saying like, responsible person, responsible people, like raising children, ideally to make it and not, I'm getting like set them up for like breaking. There's a lot. That could go in a total huge direction, but that's the gist of it. And then how formed and clear is our consciousness as teenagers? How formed and clear is our consciousness as teenagers? Very clear, but it's like very chosen, clear-sighted. Like this is when we like, I'm getting like, we think we're adults and we're practicing adults. They're saying we're practicing adults. We're stepping into, we're like mini adults. And that like transition from being a kid to being an adult is very hard on us because some of us are excited to become adults and some of us want to stay kids. And I'm getting that like the peer pressure of how everybody is changing is just like so confusing and overwhelming. And like we think we have to be a certain way. But they're saying that's changing, that's changing, that's changing. Like the younger generations now have exposure to so many things that they can choose to be playful adults. And they don't have to be so serious. Like adulthood doesn't mean serious anymore. Like it doesn't have to be. Whereas in the past it was like, oh, you're going to be an adult. Like, you're going to work it's like there's just like this idea of an adult as someone who's just like serious and that like doesn't play and like doesn't laugh and like tells you what to do. Like there's this facade that I'm getting like the burst the bubble, like that bubble popped, and there's less of that pressure to be so serious on teenagers now, like the grown up, like what is a grown up. And I'm getting that, like, because so many people are like, so many people, like, there have been movements, whether we're aware of them or not, where we as adults are addressing missing being children and missing being playful, and like this adulting, like what is adulting, right? And so because there's been this like openly expressed, movement around adulting, we've got like generations, younger generations that are like I don't have to be an adult like that. Like I don't have to be a serious person to be an adult. I can still be playful. And so that's been broken down, like that facade has been broken down. So it's changed. But let's see one more thing. How formed and clear is our consciousness as teenagers? They're just saying very clear-sighted. Like your consciousness is very clear-sighted and very chosen. And so this is the time when we recognize that we may or may not have chosen some of our belief systems. We can choose them and we can change our minds. And like that in itself can be overwhelming and confusing. But they're saying like very clear, consciousness is very clear-sighted. And this like rebelliousness, the angst of like being a teenager is your willingness or not, the resistance or not to like want to be or not be a grown-up. And like the resentment, and it's like so much judgment on like, oh, you're so immature, like grow up, versus like, it's like someone being told that when like they really valued and loved, like they had a really great, like healthy, playful, fun childhood, and they don't want to let it go. Like it was good. And so there's like a peer pressure of just like, oh, grow up, or like stop being so mature or whatever. Like peer pressure really affects the transition from youth into adulthood, and like young adulthood is what they're saying. They're kind of saying like peer pressure is a bust. Peer pressure is a bust. And grown-ups, and they're like, grown-ups, burst your bubble. And they're just like, time for changes, and times are changing, and they're like continuing to change to like allow us to feel like children for our whole lives, they're saying, like into being older generations, like being playful and like a child throughout your entire life. Like they're like, that is a quality time. Like that is a quality lifetime, is if you can remain childlike throughout your entire life and be playful, growing and learning, and this excitement for life, this like living on the edge. Next question. What are the mechanisms that drive infants to be completely attached to parents? So I'm getting like there's like the sensory, like the smell and the warmth, and like they're still a part of you, right? They're a part of you. And so they're showing like a baby like latching onto mommy, like for nourishment, for milk, for everything. But it's like your smells, like everything about you is like home, right? It's like being in the womb for so long, and then being outside of it. It's like the baby's like child still wants to be there, like that's home. And so it's going to keep wanting to go home, right? And so it's like, and let's say like, both parents, the smells is like the latching is like, anything that feels like they're straying or getting a little bit far away, like they're gonna want to have that nurturing, that familiarity, the family connection, the smells, the sensations, like your skin, your temperature, your tone of voice, all those things feel like home. So no matter what, like if they need comforting, they're going to want to go that because you feel like home. You feel like home. You feel at home. So the mechanisms that drive infants to be completely attached to parents is that you are like a home. And when they want to go home, they're going to go home. Like it's just that it's they're just saying like a home, like a home. And part of you, like they are part of you. And so to detach from you feels strange. And so they want to be super close to you because you're like a unit. You're like a single unit. And like these pieces, you separate a little bit. It's like it takes time. Like they're just saying, like, let's imagine 3 people, 2 parents and a child. Let's just say it's like that. And they're showing like as one unit and then like separate 1, 2, 3, a little bit of space, but then they come back together. Right? And then they come back together. And then over time, there's enough comfort to like go away from each other for longer. Right? How can adults better appreciate the mindset of a young child? How can adults better appreciate the mindset of a young child? You are born a child, and this idea of like growing up and responsibilities and all that, they're calling it a concept. It's a concept that's been developed through civilizations of just like the responsibilities of being a grown up. And like that's been put on us. Like we put that on ourselves. But they're saying like you're born a child, and they're saying you choose depending on what you're born into or the belief systems that you adopt. You choose whether or not to die a child. You can be a child your whole entire life. And they're saying some people really want to be, and they really struggle to be in society because they resonate so deeply with being a child. They want to be a child. They're calling it like, these are, you call these things like subcultures, right? But there are some people who just like refuse to adopt belief systems around being a grown-up. And they're saying that's their choice. That's their human life choice. That's their right. That's their birthright to do something like that. Interesting way to answer that question. So how can adults better appreciate the mindset of a young child? They're saying be free. Like be free to be a child. Like when you're looking, you can appreciate that they're children because you are also born a child. Like you have been a child. And so when you see them reflecting back the ways that you were a child through them being children, you have this appreciation for new life. They're kind of saying like kind of like a reborn, kind of like a redo, like rebirth, redo. But they're like, you can choose, like it's your choice to, the things that we appreciate about children are things that we can choose to do if we want to. Like depending on how odd it might feel, the things that you appreciate so much, like you can be and you can do. Like they're kind of saying nothing's stopping you. Like what's stopping you? They're almost like there's like appreciate question mark, appreciate. Like that's relative to your belief systems on like what a child is and what a child does. What does it mean to be a child? And if you consider yourself a child, a grown up, a grown child. Like they're making all these jokes. They're like, when people say like you're a grown child, it's like perhaps, perhaps. They're saying, you're all different. Like we're all different. We're all different people with different belief systems and different wants and needs and desires and belief systems around age. And they're saying like, you guys put numbers on these things like you're ageless. They're like, you're ageless. You're ageless. Like if you really remove like everything, like you don't have to have an age. You don't have to be an age. Like this is something, these are all concepts that have been developed over, centuries, belief systems. One more time, how can adults better appreciate the mindset of a young child? They're saying be free, like just be free, to be free. And what does being free mean to you? Like free to be yourself. Like if that's the thing you love about children is they're so themselves or so authentically themselves, they don't hold back. They're like, why can't you do it? Like, why can't you do that? Of course you can do that. You can do anything you want. Why is the desire to play so strong in children? Why is the desire to play so strong in children? I'm getting learning and growing through experiences, like adventure, exploring, like loving to learn, loving to grow. That's an achievement, like growing and learning and playing and discovering an adventure. Like that's an achievement. Storytelling, pretending, make believe, fantasy, visualization, like coming up with ideas, creating things, making things. Like they're saying, like there's such an innate celebration of life. Like you don't even have to call it that when you're a child because you're just doing it. Like in every moment you're celebrating life step by step. Every little thing you look at, it's just like everything is this excitement, has this excitement and is a celebration of life. The wanting to explore, the wanting to learn, like from each other and like through each other's eyes. And then how can adults consciously recultivate that energy? It's the second part to the question. How can adults consciously recultivate that energy? They're showing someone on a pogo stick, and they're like, do something that gives you excitement. Like, do you need to go get a pogo stick? Like, do you need to go get something that has you bounce? Oh, they're kind of giving this idea of like, when we're small and like the way that we can get like lifted up and thrown around and like all that stuff, like this bounciness like adds like to our excitement from like, mind, body, spirit, right? So you're being picked up all the time when you're a little kid and you're jumping around and you're skipping and you're, running around and falling down, and you just have so much movement and activity in your body, but also like you're playing like sports, or you're playing with like these games and these toys that like, have bounce and excitement to them. And then when we get older, it's like no one's really like picking us up and throwing us around. It's like we're kind of too big for that, like whatever that means, too big, right? But they're like, bounce around, jump around, like going to like trampoline parks, they're like, go do these active fun things that like make you feel like you're small, like remind you that like you're small and make you feel like a kid and you can jump around and you can play. And they're saying like that's the fastest way to get back into the desire to play, is like usually through some playful movement. If that's dancing, if that's singing together. And they're saying like, through your children, like through playing with your children. But like, ideally like, doing something that has to do with like your physical body, that like wakes up your inner child. So they're showing someone again on like a pogo stick, right? And it's like you're bouncing and you're going really high, or you're on a trampoline, and All of these things just remind you of feeling small and light and playful and like bouncy and excited. So it's through playful movement. Okay. Next question. Before toddlers develop comprehensive language, are there unique ways that they can communicate with each other that adults can't? So let's say, what are the unique ways that before toddlers develop? Okay. Before we develop language, comprehensive language, are there ways that we can communicate with each other? What are those ways? So they're showing like sense of smell is a thing, like sense of smell, like the same way that there's like the latching like a home to the family, like you're smelling the things, like you have like the sensory overload of the things around you, even if you don't have the language and you don't have like the words to communicate those things, there's still like an understanding of like what you're taking in. So they're saying like through like the sensory perceptions, and they're even saying like telepathy, like whether you know you have it or not, like telepathy, like you're communicating through telepathy. So you see two babies like looking at each other in a stroller or something, and they're not communicating, but they're looking at each other, right? There's communication going on. It doesn't have to be with words. It doesn't have to be with language. They're saying it's like simpler. It's the simplest form of communication, and it's the same. It's the same when they're like, they're saying it's exactly the same when like you know somebody so well and you're hanging out with them, you experience stuff together, and you can look at each other and have a conversation without speaking, without sharing words. You just kind of look at each other and you're like, and you just have like an entire conversation in that. They're like, that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. They're like, there's like energetically and through like smells and like hormones, like all the things that are so like unseen and subtle, like they're saying that it's being communicated like all the time. They're even saying like through the tone of voice and like grunting, like or like obviously like crying, or whatever noises that they're making, like those noises communicate to you as well, and they communicate to each other as well. And then they're showing like kids, like they might like hit each other, and like they're saying test boundaries in those ways, like they test each other's boundaries. But there are unspoken there is unspoken communication, there are unspoken conversations that are happening between like babies and toddlers and infants. It's like even like before sight, like there can be smell and sound, right? So there's that. But then like there's a lot more that happens when they can see each other. So it's like all through like the sensory development. And again, it might not have the comprehension of language in the mind, but it's what is happening is being understood in like the simplest form. Okay, last question. What's the most important message we need to know about youth? What is the most important message we need to know about youth? Be strong for them. They're saying be responsible for them. Show them the power of being strong. Show them the power of being your contribution, like contributing. They're saying make it. Like when they said early on, you make it or break it, they're saying make it. Make it. Make them. You make them. You support how they are made. They can change their mind, but they're saying if you were given the privilege of having children, it is your duty and your responsibility to show them to be strong, to be responsible, to make it better for them. They're saying, make it better, be better, do better, show them better. And they're bringing up the words peace, peaceful. They're saying contribution, like being contributive, like serve, helping, helpful, service, offering, giving, generosity, but also like the reciprocity, like show them reciprocity, like show them the flow of give and take, show them what reciprocity looks like, the awareness, teach them self-awareness, teach them to be aware of themselves and teach them how to be aware of other people. And they're saying like through your actions, because I'm getting like they're watching you like a hawk. Like they're learning from you, like you are responsible as their example of what it means to be in this world, what it means to live in this world, what it means to survive in this world. So they're saying like having children is they're saying there's a lot of belief systems around having children. And the responsibility of being given the gift of bringing a life into this world right now. And what can happen. And they're saying, make it better. Like, no break it. No more break it. Don't break anything. Don't make it. Don't break it. The future generations are grappling with the current consciousness that's being projected out everywhere around the word doomed. And they're saying like the word doom and doomed has like skyrocketed, like through consciousness, like global consciousness, universal consciousness, where it's like everyone's thinking like things are doomed and like, let's just give up. Not everyone, but they're saying there is a large portion of the population that believes in doom, that believes that we're doomed. And they're saying that's a choice. And like what you create, you will recreate until you create something new. So they're saying, do you want to create the break, the doom? Or do you want to make it a better place, a better world? Do you want to be better people? Do you want to be a better person? Do you want to make better people? Do you want to make a better person? They're saying, make a better person. Like help shape and form and mold and protect and strengthen the person that you helped to create. The person who you've created requires your strength and your responsibility to make this a better place. And it's like each child being born is like all the children being born. It's like a chance for a new future, right? That's the hope. They're like the destination is like, they're like, it's a new destination, like a new life, a new destination. And where you go depends on how you create it. Like, how are you going to create the future of this world? And they're saying it can go into so many places. It can go into so many beautiful places. And yet there's this like almost like force fixed, like magnet of everyone's eyes, thinking that this is doom. And they're saying, not necessarily, like that's completely up to you. It's completely up to you to make it a better place. They're saying 100%, 1,000%, 1,000,000%. It is up to you to make it a better place. And they're like, and to train, to teach, to protect, to support, to be responsible for these younger generations, for the youth, for the future. Is there anything else? What's the most important message we need to know about youth? They said, don't be a part of the problem. If you can't handle the responsibility of having children, don't have them. If you can't handle the strength and responsibility that is required for raising children in this world today, right now, do not have them. And they said, and certainly don't have them and harm them. They're saying it's critical, crucial. We are beyond the tipping point of mental illness and mental and emotional health issues, creating so much confusion around belief systems. They're saying it's not productive. A lot of it, it's not real. It's imagined. And in that fear, imagination, it's creating a world of making things worse instead of inspiring the world to make things better. And they're saying inspiration to make it better, not the desperation and the destruction of making it worse. So if you can't bear the responsibility to make it a better place here, right now, they're like, choose another direction of creation, right? Don't have kids. They're saying crucial, critical. It's critical to be a responsible parent right now, these days, these current events. So they're saying be strong, protect, be responsible, peaceful, education, like they're saying healthy education, like community and diversity and responsibility and respect and kindness and compassion, collaboration, creation. And they're saying like if it can only happen like that in a smaller community, in a smaller space, then they're saying let it be that. Like if a child, if you can't give that to your child, it's kind of like having these small communities to raise kids, like these small supportive communities raising kids, and not unnecessarily exposing the youth to like the overwhelm, and they're saying the ridiculousness of like all the stuff going on everywhere. Like they don't need to see all of that because they're saying it's really messy and it's not really rooted in anything that's like substantial and like of quality of living. And so they're kind of saying like focus on like the quality of life that you want for the future, and like kind of like create that in smaller communities and create that with, they're kind of saying like almost like tribal, like there's a return to connection and a return to, you know, healthy communication and there's a return to honest education, fair education. And they're saying like, peaceful, respectful communities who are kind of like blocking out and locking out like all the bullshit. They're kind of saying like that is like a safe environment to be raising like a strong, responsible, healthy future person. Okay. Anything else? What's the most important message we need to know about youth? They're saying like, do not pretend. Oh, like do not pretend around your kids, like they see through it. Like don't. They're like, you don't have to like say everything, but you can be honest with them about like certain struggles. But there's something about like they can see through it. Like don't pretend so much with the young, like with the youth. Like they understand more than we want them to. They understand on so many levels of like things that are going on that like if you lie to them, they learn to betray themselves. They learn betrayal. So they're kind of saying just like kind of like, like tiptoe. They're like, you can find the words, like you can find the ways to express things that need to be expressed that are like important. But like if they're like straight up asking you something, they're just saying like don't pretend like something's not a struggle when it actually is, because they can feel it all over the place. They're saying you can tell them something without letting on the details. Like you can let them know enough. And that, they're kind of saying like seeing you get through a struggle is a testament to your strength. And then they learn that they can get through hard times. So that's why it's important to acknowledge like I'm struggling or I'm having a hard time or we're trying to figure this out, and just letting them know like we got this, but like we're figuring it out and it's going to be a little tricky right now, but like letting them know, because it's like such a testament to like how to be responsible, how to take charge, and how to like get through something. Like they learn strength from you if they know that like if they witnessed and experienced you getting through a struggle and you didn't hide or like pretend it wasn't happening, like they saw it. And there's like part of a family, like part of a family is like getting through hard times together. It strengthens the whole system, the family system and the community. Okay. So that was the Akashic Records on youth. I hope you enjoyed that. Feel free to leave any comments you might have in the comment section below. And I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.